Planet Earth 3, Episode 3 is about freshwater. So in this we follow freshwater from where it starts, up in the mountains, to where it ends, down in the oceans. And I think it's a very good narrative structure. You almost feel like you're following the water on a journey, and that's ultimately the narrative device of the episode. And I think it's a really good one. It's a really smart way of doing it. Again, you get different animals, you get different species along the way, different types of animals, different stages of the water, which I think is pretty good. So you feel like you get a very well-rounded view of life in freshwater. So we start off in the mountains in Venezuela, which were the plateaus which inspired The Lost World, written by Arthur Conan Doyle, and they do look quite prehistoric. But up here you see that these areas get a lot of torrential rain, which ultimately all flows down. You know, these are the highest peaks, so they do ultimately flow off them. And this is the origins of rivers and streams, which is quite interesting. And as I say, we follow the river downstream, and kind of the upper reaches of the water, it's obviously a lot faster flowing. There aren't a lot of animals that live here. We see a lot of freshwater invertebrates, which maybe aren't obviously as interesting. I mean, it's cool to see them. I think, you know, they're still an important part of the ecosystem, obviously, but they're not as impressive as, say, crocodiles. If we are dealing with the flow of freshwater and dealing with the different stages of its journey to ultimately the oceans, I think it would almost be amiss to not touch upon these invertebrates. Then we touch upon slightly more interesting animals, and that is the giant salamanders of Japan. So these are the largest amphibians in the world. They do touch upon that. They are pretty impressive animals. We talk about how long-lived they are. We see them hunting fish. They're filmed exclusively in the dark. It's quite an eerie part of the episode. I think they were really cool. What I also liked really a lot about that sequence, and this episode as a whole, is the music. The music's great. The music is very representative of where each sequence is filmed. Like for the salamanders, the music feels Japanese. It feels like very Asian. And I think that's really good. A lot of the episodes like that, when it's filmed in Africa, you hear kind of tribal almost drum beats. When it's in Brazil, you hear Latin American sort of strings. It's just really good. It does a good job of making you feel like the part of the world where they're filming the footage. Like you feel like you're there almost. We also touch upon the salmon run. Again, they couldn't do a freshwater episode without touching on the salmon run. We don't spend a lot of time with the salmon, but we do talk about it. I mean, it's still important. It's the largest upstream fish migration in the world, so you kind of have to talk about it. We talk about bears hunting salmon. We don't get the iconic shots of the bears, you know, standing at the waterfall while the salmon jump up into their jaws. Instead we get bears actually diving for the salmon, which I think is better, to be honest, because we've seen the bears catching the salmon like 100 times before and since. So I think it was good to show you just something different. We then get some stunning footage of the Grand Canyon. Again, the cinematography in this episode is great. We get a lot of great shots of the Grand Canyon. We get a lot of great shots of like Angel Falls at the start of the episode, Iguazu Falls. Later in the episode, again, stunning footage. The cinematography in this series in general is great. I mean, I'll touch upon that in every episode I review, I imagine. As the water starts to widen and we get further downstream, we touch upon otters in India. Asian short-clawed otters are probably one of the most charismatic animals on the planet. They're just great. They're otters, which are already quite cute. They're social. You see them playing a lot in the water, it's great. The best part of that sequence though is when they start facing off against mugger crocodiles. We saw mugger crocodiles in Planet Earth 3, which was, I mean, as I said, the highlight of that series for me. But here they're basically just getting attacked with these otters. These little cute otters are banding together to fight these clearly quite intimidating looking crocodiles. And it's just nice. Again, there doesn't seem to be any real reason to it. Obviously they're defending their territories and themselves from them. But the crocodiles kind of look like they're minding their business and the otters are just kind of harassing them. It's kind of almost funny. But no, it's a really good bit of footage. Again, it's not something you expect, I think. I think now we're a bit more aware of that behaviour, but I think at the time people probably would be quite surprised to see otters mobbing crocodiles. Especially such small, quite cute otters as these. So yeah, it was a really good bit of the episode. Again, that's up there, that's a highlight. If you are a fan of crocodiles and you feel like the crocodiles weren't getting the respect they deserved in that bit of footage though, then fear not, because next we move on to the Mara River in Africa, where we see the wildebeest migration. And the wildebeest, as we've seen a million times before, have to go down to the river to drink, and there they are ambushed by crocodiles. Now this bit of footage, again, they didn't really need to put a lot of effort in. Like the salmon run, it's been done a million times, we've seen it all before, we know kind of the beats of the footage. But no, they put a lot of effort into it. They still spent a lot of time with the crocodiles. It's the largest sort of grouping of Nile crocodiles anywhere in the world, which makes sense because it's the biggest feast they're going to get. They don't make it easy. They talk about how, you know, it takes like an hour to drown the wildebeest. Like it's not a, you know, when they catch the wildebeest, that's just the start of the battle for the crocodiles. They've got to then, you know, kill it, you know, catching it. It's the bit that sticks to the viewers the most, but it's not necessarily the end point of the whole thing. Which I think was good. Again, I think the whole sequence was good. It's almost better than I think it has a right to be, almost, because it's been done so many times before and since the series came out. But no, I'm glad they in a way, I'm glad they filmed it. And then we kind of slow down. The episode does slow down a bit when we start talking about lakes. It's not all rivers, you know, it's not all just fast flowing. We've got to kind of slow down a bit. And lakes are interesting. We talk about Lake Malawi, we spend quite a bit of time there. The best part of that sequence for me was the dolphin fish. They have like an electric field around them which they use to find their prey and stun them, it seems. They obviously make a little zap sound when they catch the fish, which is obviously done for dramatic effect, but still, it adds to the episode. I think the fact that they're shot in the dark, they're quite eerie. I feel like those fish wouldn't be as intimidating in the light as they were in the dark. They seem quite eerie, quite ominous in this sequence. While we're at Lake Malawi, we also talk about lake flies, these little midget flies that breed in the lake, but we see when they become adults and they start to mate, they basically swarm, and it's like this almost smoking tower above the lake. Flies, again, not an obviously interesting animal on an individual level, but together they form these massive swarms which are quite cool to look at. So yeah, I like that part of the episode. After that we see the biggest lake in the world, which is Lake Baikal. Again, here we just kind of see the stuff there, we don't focus on particular species. We talk about Baikal seals, we talk about giant amphipods. It's interesting enough. After that we move back to rivers and we see the Amazon. I mean, the Amazon, we had to talk about it, it's the biggest river in the world, it's the most impressive one. We spend a lot of time with botos, the pink river dolphins of the Amazon. Again, it's probably the most in-depth look at them I've ever seen. We talk about their mating behaviour, how the males will bob out the water with stones in their mouth, which is quite cool. I think the botos are an animal that I find quite interesting. Again, freshwater dolphins aren't something that are spring to mind as obvious, you know, and I think botos are the most famous of the river dolphins that are alive anyway. The Yangtze River dolphin's probably more famous just because it's dead. Again, I don't remember the botos being as heavily featured in this episode. I remember them being in it, but I'm glad that we spent a lot of time with them. And after that we focus on the Pantanal. We see piranhas here, and we see piranhas stripping these fish down to the bones in minutes. Again, we've heard the stories about piranhas. Some of the stories about piranhas are a bit exaggerated, but here we do see that, and it is quite impressive to see. Obviously they're not stripping like, you know, humans or cows or anything like you hear in the folk stories, but it's still really cool. Again, they are, well, maybe they are a bit blown out of proportion with regards to the actual damage that they can do to people, or do on a regular basis. Don't laugh at do. You'd be better than that. We do still see how we should really respect them. They are still formidable in their own right. And then we talk about bird life, obviously with a lot of fish, a lot of birds are going to be there. We see spoonbills, we see storks, and they are all food for caimans. We see the birds falling at the nests and the spectacled caimans getting them. Again, this I'd seen before. I feel like I'd seen it before, and I think I've seen it since, but it's still cool to see again. I feel like a lot of things in this episode we'd seen before, but I think it still needed to be there. And then we follow the crab-eating macaques. The crab-eating macaques are cool. Again, seeing them swimming, I knew they caught crabs, I knew they went like fishing basically. I didn't think up to this point I knew that they actually properly dove and swam for them, but seeing the macaques in the water, especially the young ones, is quite interesting. We end the episode in salt marshes on the eastern shores of the United States of America, where greater snow geese flock in vast numbers. This is kind of like the cranes, where I don't remember enjoying it as much as I did, but I really appreciated it here. Again, anytime there's mass flocks of birds, it is quite an impressive spectacle, and here they were massive, there was loads of them. So it was really cool, I really liked that. I liked at the end of the episode we talked about how life-giving freshwater is. It was kind of the antithesis of the mountains episode. We ended that episode on a sort of forbidding note, talking about how dangerous mountains are and how really none of us are really able to deal with them. Whereas here, with freshwater, it was very much a kind of positive note about how, you know, really life on land would not be able to function without freshwater. I think that was a really good way of ending the episode. And with the massive flocks of geese, it kind of symbolises the life that is present there. After that we get the diary sequence where we talk about the guys filming the piranhas. I think the diaries, at this point when they were obviously started doing them, they kind of felt like they put more effort in. It just felt good, you got the camaraderie between them, you got the banter between them, even the guys, the Brazilian guys that were taking them around to show them where the piranhas were, was quite good. Yeah, I quite liked it, it was a pretty good good diary sequence. Again, you felt the spontaneity as well when they couldn't find the piranhas, so they just started filming caiman. That was quite fun. Yeah, I liked it overall. Overall, this episode's pretty good. I think I prefer the mountains episode a bit more, but this episode's pretty good. We do get a lot of stuff we've seen before, I think, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think all of it was justified. Nothing didn't belong here. I think highlights were up there. To be honest, what sprang to mind as highlights were probably the otters and the mugger crocodile. I really liked the stuff with the Nile crocodiles, the snow geese at the end, the piranhas, the botos. There was a lot to like. Nothing that was like as good as the snow leopards in the last episode. Again, I feel like every time snow leopards are in a series, they're usually up there as one of the best parts. They're hard to top normally. But no, I thought this episode was pretty good, definitely worth watching, and yeah, pretty good stuff. So next week I'll be doing the caves episodes, which is a unique habitat because we don't see it a lot. People don't focus on caves too much, but from what I remember, this is a pretty good episode and an underrated one, I think. So yeah, I'll be reviewing that next. Obviously, as ever, if you like this, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, or don't. You know, it goes without saying at this point. But yeah, overall, this episode was good. I look forward to the next episode, and I look forward to seeing you then. Goodbye.